Hi, I'm Fred Satilli. I'm going to read Section 3 of Hotsy Totsy Feminazi, Strangers in a Strange Land, and I can honestly say I was at the Domestic Violence Council meeting yesterday, and they just don't get it. A fantastic topic was brought up as a potential agenda item for the new year, and the council said to the person who made the recommendation that this is a fantastic thing that we were unaware of, and we're going to definitely add this to our docket of things. Well, this is something that was discussed thoroughly a year and a half ago, and all of those people at the desk up front, the big shots, they all saw that. They were all there. They were all aware of it. There's no new people up there. And it was stunning to me that this person who I hadn't seen at these meetings before came and brought this and presented it as if it was new, and they acknowledged it as new, even though it was really the same old thing once again. So this section of the book is something that may change perspectives on who people are and what they're doing and why they do what they do. And I just couldn't leave it out of the book. So here we go, Strangers in a Strange Land. Now, the members of the Los Angeles County Council on Domestic Violence are credentialed. They have everything from master's degree to certificates of training in human relationships as prescribed by their positions as experts in the field of domestic violence relationships. Please understand who these people are. They are domestic violence shelter providers, district attorneys, prosecutors, police, an occasional judge, intimate partner violence experts, homosexual women, public defenders, social workers, and lawyers. They are educated. They are paid to work within the system that has hired them. But because it is a political system, they are heavily indoctrinated not to upset it. Because it is operated without integrity and illegally, there are people outside of it who wish to upset it. Among the 60-plus people who frequent the public meetings of the DVC, there are 3 people who are not paid to be there. Those people are Don Saxton, Stanley Green, and me. Over the years I have attended these meetings, I have never seen a woman there who was not paid or otherwise compelled to be there for business. I find that fact interesting. I can conclude that there is no interest from women in domestic violence policies, unless, of course, they are paid. Considering the outreach to women regarding domestic violence, you would think that in DV Awareness Month, November, when the DV Council grants its touted Betty Fisher Award, there would be lay women there to celebrate. In fact, not only are there none, but despite a battery of press releases, there is no media to cover the event. The DV Council is only important to those who are compensated to be part of it. The members, especially the executive members of the DVC, should, because of their extensive education and training, be hyper-aware of or somewhat intuitive of the mental and emotional state of each person they meet. Remember, these people are the advisory council of a very tight group of only 5 Los Angeles County supervisors in setting the DVC policies in a jurisdiction of over 10 million people. A step out of the book for a moment. This is 5 people representing 10 million people. In LA here, these 5 people are often called the 5 Little Kings. Anyway, back to the book. For those who do not fully understand, the title, County Supervisor, may not seem incredibly powerful, but the LA Board of Supervisors of some of the most powerful politicians in the country. LA is huge. It has an international seaport and an international airport. It controls a vast voting bloc. It is a huge media source. Policies that are adopted here have international consequences. This assertion is easily observed in its police departments and courts' handling of the crimes of illegal aliens. Understand, there are only 5 people at the top of this massive food chain, and their power and discretion is unfettered and broad. Understanding the power of the Board of Supervisors, it is only natural to investigate who is advising them. Clearly, domestic violence policies in LA are bad, so something must be wrong. Both Don Saxton and Stanley Green are far more educated and experienced than I when it comes to the study of the Domestic Violence Council. Don is a powerful researcher and a philosophical visionary. His highly educated insight goes to the very core of the outrages of the DVC and far beyond. It goes to the core of the corruption of the Board of Supervisors. Because of the immensely circular nature of corruption, Don has trouble expressing its findings in any form other than highly detailed and lengthy reports that are not easily consumed by anyone who does not have an intense interest in the subjects that he studies. My feeling is that he is too academic for his own good. My perhaps unqualified opinion on this is largely based on my own limitations, but most audiences are even more limited than I, so I feel that my review has some merit. When Don attends a DVC meeting, he is hyper-aware of more information, observations, and conclusions than most people can process. He is not a smooth orator, but does eventually get his message across if a person listens. The DVC has absolutely no intention of ever listening to Don Saxton. This frustrates him madly, which is a thrill for the feminazis who provoke him to anger. Once angry, they can characterize him as a disturbing element that must be dealt with by a means that they enjoy most: assault by DV bad policy trained police. Rather than see Don for what he is, a victim of domestic violence who is frustrated with the DVC's part in perpetrating and perpetuating the domestic violence against him, rather than use their training in human relationships that is supposed to be the basis of their credibility, they first use a tactic which should be their very last resort. They demand silence. He watches as they antagonize him. He knows their game, but refuses to play it because he knows that courtesy will dumb down his presentation to the point where it and he will be dismissed. They can't let him make his point and demand a response because they know that they are guilty as sin. Don charges me with failure to stand up strongly in that way. He is not wrong. Fred, why do you play nice with these bigots? Why do you allow them to openly disrespect you? My actions with the DVC may not be heroic, but I don't see his method working either. I am damaged, but I do not have Don's emotions, strengths, and/or limitations. I have my own. Like me, Don is damaged, but the DVC has never even shown an acknowledgement that they know that such might be the case. All they have shown, and I mean all, is a desire to control him. The worst possible reaction to him in his damaged condition. I feel that their failure in this regard is important because it shows what a fraud they are in awareness of the causes of domestic violence. Don's problems are easy to see. For Don, Some members of the DV upper echelon are a batch of surrogate, emotionally abusive wives. I've seen them snap at him like an abusive mother with a brat kid at Walmart. It's no wonder he responds by what they consider to be acting out. Remember, it is they who are the trained professionals. The funny part of Don's aggression in dealing with the DVC is that in any adult setting, he would be dead wrong to act the way he does. But in the schoolyard bitch fight that the DVC brings the confrontation down to, his actions are oddly appropriate. He is simply acting instinctively to the setting that, in fact, the DVC has contrived. If it weren't for the DVC's ability to summon and control police intervention, Don's DVC encounters would immediately spiral down to a screaming match that would be mutually enjoyed until both sides were satisfied and exhausted. I would like to say at this point that my indictment of some members of the upper echelon of the DVC does not include Deputy District Attorney and DV Council Chair Michelle Daniels. I don't know Michelle Daniels personally, so I don't really know how she feels about domestic violence and the Domestic Violence Council. I do know that she has shown nothing but professional handling of all the challenges of chairwoman of the DVC, probably more than I even really know or appreciate. Whether it is a political organization, and she is a good politician in that way. It's a comment outside the book. Whether sincere or just a politician, I will say that in treatment of me, her respectful grace has been a major improvement over her predecessor. The DVC extremists regard Don Saxon as an unprofessional annoyance who needs to be controlled. The irony is, Don regards them the same way. We all know that the winner writes the history books. The other irony is Don is controllable. The DVC is just not professional enough to do it the right way. They're nothing but bullies. They've proved it. Their policy towards Don is shut up or we'll shut you up. So all I can say is hotsy-totsy feminazi. Win your way. The only way you can. Brutalize the man. Now, Stanley Green is the antithesis of Don Saxton. Fighting the same battle, Stanley would never allow himself to do anything short of the ultimate in political correctness. If Stanley were to utter something that was short of fully acceptable to every person that ever lived, he would take responsibility immediately for the faux pas and make a full public apology. He's intense. There are people who demand it of him, but those same people are offended when he demands the same from them. I heard a prosecutor, of all people, a person whose job in law demands perfection of wording, say that Stanley has become boringly strident in his demand of proper wording. I agree with that, by the way. That prosecutor didn't see any irony of the position. The DVC, which also is boringly and strident in their wording, twists wordings in its reports and minutes of meetings to suit their agenda. Stanley keeps them honest. He's the only one who does. Why does he do it? Because those reports, in theory, are read by the Board of Supervisors. You remember them, the powerful politicians who dictate policy that reverberates around the world? Don fights with a loose cannon. Stanley fights with a bulletproof vest. None of the things that bother the DVC about Don Saxton are present in Stanley Green. However, Stanley must also be controlled. Feminazism, after all, is all about control. Stanley was a victim of extreme physical assault by his ex-wife decades ago. His attempt at that time to get services for his needs including medical, shelter, legal, and psychological, were met with such deficiency, and that's putting it mildly, that Stanley Green became a national figure in the fight for such services for people like him. It did not take him long to realize that there was much more people like him. It was everybody except heterosexual women. There were plenty of services for them. As I related earlier in the book, Stanley's return to the DVC on a regular basis was the result of the Woods case. Stanley's return was met with disdain by the DVC, which was undeniably resistant to an unindoctrinated man involved. Since I did tell about the involvement of Stanley Green earlier in the book, I won't reiterate it now. What I would like to say about Stanley in regard to the DVC is simply this. After 2 decades and all the relationships he's made, why haven't they helped him? Allow me to explain this in a manner that is the way I like to receive information. Stanley was brutally assaulted by his ex-wife 2 decades ago. There were no services for him at that time. It was a time in history when men were automatically destroyed in family court. Stanley was stripped of visitation of his child. He was stripped of drivers and professional licenses, ending his career. He was stripped of his passport. He was given a ruling for support payments that could not possibly be met. He was stripped of all assets. He was intentionally impoverished. Since that time, his daughter has grown up and the two of them have established a relationship. However, the entire balance of injustice done to Stanley Green remains. Why does he have a financial debt to his abuser? Why does he not have a driver's license or passport? Why must he live a life of poverty? Why have his abusers, the feminazi policymakers, not been brought to account? With the exception of one LAPD police officer, no one at the DVC has ever indicated that Stanley Green might need something. No one has asked him why he comes to the meetings. None of these service providers and public defenders have ever approached the man who stands right in their midst with enough insight to recognize his need for what they do. Are they blind? There should be a committee to approach anybody necessary to immediately get Stanley his driver's license back, get him his professional license, too late now, but get him his passport, and exonerate him from any family law related debt, so that he can go forward to live a normal life that each and every one of them does. Why on earth haven't they done this? They know how he sees them. How can they live with that? Why don't they help him? I understand why the feminazis don't help him. All they do is hate. But the good people of the DVC, of whom there is a vast majority, are they not allowed? Who's stopping them? Could it be that they just aren't smart enough to do the job that stands right before them, month after month? I believe that the rank and file members of the DVC need to move to get the feminazis out. The good ladies need to lobby the Board of Supervisors to sanitize their ranks. How could an educated and trained army of women not help Stanley Green? Something there is so wrong, it's just crazy. Well, that's Section 3, Strangers in a Strange Land. And once again, as I've said many times before, I want these groups, whether they be police, correction officers, judges, doctors, anybody to self-sanitize their group. The good people, all those social workers and the DCFS and the people service providers of the DVC, they need to sanitize their own ranks. They need to evaluate who the heck is controlling what and where and how and what. I mean, am I naive? Is there just so much federal money for the county and they all know it that they just blindly go on so that they can pay back their college loans and have a lifestyle built upon a career that's largely bogus? It's horrible. It's once again around and around. It's a circular problem. Is it just all about the money, or is it ignorance and apathy? Either way, that's the end of this section. I hope you get the idea. There's one more section to go. It's by far the most sincere and sentimental for me. I'll be back with it soon. Thanks again. Please get a copy of the book, Hotsy Totsy Feminazi, The Straight Story, and read the whole thing. You might have to read it multiple times. Thanks again. I'm Fred Satilli.